Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, maybe the only show that shows you how to close the wealth gap in your own life with the man who's done it for many, our wealth coach himself, Tyrone French. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Closing the Wealth Gap. I'm your host, Tyrone French. Thank you for tuning in. Paul Roberts, are you there? Are you getting this feed?
I am ready. You know, I love watching it. We're both wearing baseball caps. Yours correctly says coach. That makes me what, the student or the player?
Even a coach has a mentor.
I want to be a player because I want to play in this game. I want to learn how to do better at baseball or whatever we're playing here. This is a game you keep
Wait,
telling me, and I'm not playing it very well.
it's a game of money. It's a money game.
Yeah.
It's a money game. Hey, but first thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate uh, Closing the Wealth Gap and congratulate my listeners for tuning in. I appreciate you. We went over 3,000 downloads here.
Wow.
And it's just it's a seasonal thing that we do, but what happens is when we go ahead and we do these podcasts, people are listening, they're tuning in and they're giving feedback. So I just want to say, thank you.
Our pleasure. Keep teaching, keep preaching, keep coaching.
But again, what I'm finding out though, Paul, is the difficulty, and it goes back to definition. And I remember when I was in high school and I was very literate, meaning that I could, if I was called upon to read, I could read a chapter, I could read a verse, I could read a sentence
Right.
poetically. And people would sit back and they'd be amazed as far as, well, listen to his diction, listen to his grammar, the way he speaks. But if I read something and you asked me to repeat what I just read,
Mm,
I couldn't do it
mm,
because I had limited comprehension back then.
mm-hmm.
And even my as far as the word, certain words, if I didn't understand a word, if I was reading, I would pronounce that word correctly, but I would just blow through it just to complete the sentence. So not understanding the definition of that particular word threw off the entire meaning of what the writer was what they were trying to say. So I was just being judged on how well I read, how well I read, not based on my comprehension of what I just
What you
read.
remembered or what you understood. It's just a weird example, but just over the weekend, I'm watching Shaquille O'Neal on some video, and he's attacking Kevin Durant, the great player for the Boston Nets now, and I think they're talking about trading him. And he said the guy was never, he never won a championship or whatever. He wasn't the go-to guy in the team. He was a great player, but he's not the go-to guy. So why am I telling this? Because they started using some fancy terms. Well, so you're saying he wasn't this and this, and using these, I wish I could remember the big terms to describe this,
Right.
more than legacy or something. And Shaq's going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And finally Shaq says, I have no idea what those words really mean. I'm just
Mm,
saying yes.
right.
And everybody cracked up in the room. But so
But it's true.
yeah,
That's if
he's
you don't
nodding
understand,
along, right? Yeah.
communication is based on you and I having access to uh, what it is that we're trying to communicate.
Right.
And when you break that, it's like a wavelength. When you break that wavelength, you are no longer communicating. And so, like what you were just saying, Shaq was sitting there shaking his head up and down, but he didn't have a clue what the person was communicating, what they were
No.
trying to convey. So, financial literacy and financial education is the same way.
It's a buzzword, meaning when my ears perk up when I say it, I nod, yeah, financial literacy. I know what that means. I hear it all the time, but I really don't know what it means. I wish somebody would break it down for me in simple terms.
Well, again, that's what we're going to try to do on this show today. And again, we don't have time to get into all the nuances and the financial, the definition of terms and things like that. What I would suggest you do though is go to my website. I want you to go to tyronefrench.coach. And on that, in the top, you're going to see services. And there are articles on there. All you have to do is click on those articles, and you're going to get so much information based on things that you thought you knew that you didn't know. And there's a great movie in Top Gun Maverick where he's going in, he's talking to these aviators and stuff. And he said, I'm gonna show you. We're gonna go through some things that you thought you knew,
Mm-hmm.
and that's humbling. When you think you know something, and then
Mm-hmm.
you find out that you don't know anything at all about the subject,
Mm-hmm.
that is really humbling. And that's how it is with financial education and financial literacy in this country. A lot of people assume that they understand what financial literacy is, but they really don't have a clue.
Mm-hmm. No, it's one of those terms that everybody throws around and we all nod like Shaq in the interview, but we really don't know what they're talking about.
Well, first thing I want to do is I want to give people my definition of what wealth is. To me, this is the Tyrone French version of wealth,
Okay.
and it's not just me, but I kind of got this from a few authors and stuff, and I'm not really creating any. This is not really original stuff. All of this stuff has been around
But it
for
resonates with
ages.
you. This rings true when you hear it.
Meaning that I was able to, once I got it into my psyche, I was able to apply it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we want to get to, the point where it's not just a word, a buzzword. We want to get to the point where not only do you understand the terms and the concepts, but you begin to take action on them.
And that's what makes a difference between a teacher and a coach. A teacher can teach me the principle. This is what you should do. This is how you should do it. This is how you should swing the bat. This is how the proper way to swing a golf club. A coach is somebody that says, now let me show you how to do it.
Let me show you how to do this. And then look at your technique and tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right. You're pulling to the left. You're using your right arm too much if you're swinging a golf club or whatever. Yeah.
So this is how I became wealthy. Wealth, my definition, is you're wealthy when the income from your assets exceeds the outgo from your liabilities and expenses. I'm going to say that again.
Okay.
You are considered wealthy when the income from your assets exceeds the outgo from your liabilities and expenses. And now let me explain this. Most people understand income.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the IRS understands income.
Yeah,
They define
everybody
it pretty
understands.
well.
What's my income? Yeah. How much is coming
so,
in?
so you want to know how much
Come
money that
on
you have
in.
coming in, right? And the name of the game is cash flow.
Right.
That's the name of the game, cash flow. How is cash flowing? Most people, their cash is flowing from their job, from their job.
Right.
They have earned income, and they value that income. They treasure that income, and they spend whatever amount of time that they need to spend to go to a job so that they can generate earned income.
And I
And
never even see the money. It just it waves as it passes me by. It comes in, come, and then it goes out right away. There are
outgo.
people tapping into it immediately. My creditors, my credit cards, my direct payments, my wife, my daughters. Everybody's tapping into that. And sometimes I wish it would. I could just see what happens because I'm not even in the process. I do something that brings it in, and then it just as quickly flows right out.
It really is a cycle. It's like a wavelength. It's a flow. And
Yeah.
we call it cash flow. It is flowing. The issue is when you. It's like the worst narrative that you can have is that I have to have a job so that I can pay my bills. I
That's
have to have a job so that I can pay my bills. What you're really saying is that I have to trade my time that I'll never get back, which is really your time is a commodity.
right.
It's an asset. It's something. It's not something that we just. It's something that we spend. It's like people will say, you hear your wife say, "I want you to spend more time with me."
Yeah. Right.
We'll say these things, not really understand the power and the impact that it has. But people, you're spending time, and see, everybody has the same amount of time.
Even the rich people, they got more time.
Everybody has the same amount of time. It's what you do with that time based on duplicating and leveraging yourself. But let's go back to the original example.
Yeah.
Again, people say, "Well, I need to get a job so I can pay my bills." What you're saying is that, and you're on this track. I call it the rat race. You're on this track subconsciously. What you're saying is that I have to go to somebody else's place of employment where I can produce a certain amount of activity where they can pay me a certain dollar amount that we agreed upon, but I'm making multiples of maybe 10 or 20 or 30 times that amount. that I'm generating the work where somebody else is actually getting the rewards from that. But I decided contractually to sell my time and my behavior, my activity for a certain dollar amount. And once I get those that agreed upon amount in my paycheck, the federal government says, okay, thank you very much. We're going to take our cut right
Yeah,
off the top.
right.
So again, you're an income producing asset for the federal government at that point. You're actually coming in and you are an income producing asset for your employer. So you already lost twice. Then here comes the kicker. Because now you're saying I have to have a job so I can make money so I can pay my bills. Now what you're doing is you're giving your money away to all of these entities: grocery store, gas, light, utility, mortgage. These are companies, Paul. These are companies or municipalities that you're literally trading, spending your time to create an income so you can literally go home and disperse it out. And then at the end of the week, because a lot of times people don't have enough money at the end of the week, which guarantees that you have to go right back
Got to
and
go
do the
back.
same thing.
Got to get more.
It's a cycle. It's a
But
treadmill.
here's what I heard you
It's a
say.
frequency that people are on, and again, it's a narrative.
So I'm trying to listen more carefully to the words that you choose. You said when your assets bring in more income than your liabilities and your outflow. You
And
didn't say
expenses.
when my job brings in more money than I spend. You didn't
Abs-
say when my effort.
Bravo.
You said my assets. And I've heard you say that before, and I thought, oh, you mean something, an asset is something that I own, but it's bringing in the money.
That's generating income to whereas again, it's creating the income. It's bringing in the money so that you don't have to work for it. See, for me, what helped me was that I learned that in order for me to have any type of lifestyle that I want, in order for me to to have any kind of time, take time off,
Right.
I had to create something that was generating income 24/7. And
Money
for
keeps
me,
coming. It's a machine that keeps coming in, printing money for you all the time here.
but again, when we talk about, and again, this show is about what is financial literacy.
Right.
You are not considered to have financial literacy if you're managing your income and expenses. And that's what most people think financial literacy is. If I can manage my income and my expenses well, to whereas I have a surplus or something saved over at the end of the week or the end of the month, then I am financially literate. That's not what it means, Paul.
Or it can mean I just understand the terms. I understand how this process works and I understand this terminology. I can speak this language. I know how to speak French, so
So
therefore I'm French. I'm Tyrone
let's
French.
say there's a lot of people that can speak a different language, but ask them, do you understand what you just said?
No.
What they do is they parrot. You can parrot any language,
Yeah.
but do you really understand what you just said? Are you really communicating, or are you just repeating something that you heard? And so again, in our society, again, they hear cash is king. You need income. You need to have earned income. The IRS, the government loves earned income, but that is the most expensive income that you are ever going to accumulate.
The
So
one I go on earn with my own effort, with my own
sweat and blood,
sweat and
the
blood,
sweat off your
brow.
brow.
Right.
That is the worst in terms of trying to create wealth. Now again, I'm not bashing people that have jobs. I'm not That's not what this is about. What I'm trying to do is get people to distinguish between what earned income and what passive income is. And when you're talking about closing the wealth gap and being wealthy, wealthy people create passive income.
They have things that then they did something to earn that, or they did something to inherit that, or they acquired that, or they controlled that. They somehow, this is mine now. I have a stake in this. a house, a business, a something, a stock, a piece of gold, whatever. And then that continues. Once I acquire it, it continues to bring money into my life.
Your coffers, whether you work or not. And
Right.
see, that's the goal. The goal is not to get a job so that you can generate income so that you can pay your bills. That's a negative narrative.
So you want to own the gold mine and not be the gold miner. You don't want to be the guy digging it out. You want to own the guy that owns the rocks.
I want to be the if let's say you don't want to be the one applying for the job. You want to be the one handing out the jobs.
Wow. Well,
It's,
yeah, but
and
that's
you can use any analogy. You don't want to be an NBA player. You want to own the team so that you can pay these salaries. Because I guarantee you, whatever salary that you're paying is minuscule to what you're the revenue that you're generating on the back end.
even when it's ridiculous. I just read today, we're taping this in September of 2022, and I'm in Southern California, so we're all rooting for the Rams because they won the Super Bowl last year, and they just signed a deal with Matthew, who's the quarterback? Stafford. If I'm not mistaken, it's $140 million contract extension or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, that's ridiculous. How can they pay him that much money? And somebody said, because they're making 10 times that, a million times more of that from his efforts.
It could be multiples of 10, 20, 30. But again, you don't stay in business by giving all your profits to your players.
No.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so people look at those numbers and they think that those are phenomenal numbers. They're minuscule in comparative terms. And based on what he's actually giving up for those dollars, it's really not enough. Because because you got to look at what's going on with those players on the back end.
Yeah.
I mean, what price tag do you put on your mobility in your 50s and 60s?
Yeah, right.
Or your sanity?
Right.
Look at how many players, end up committing suicide because of, the head trauma and stuff.
Head traumas and everything, yeah.
So again, so in comparative terms, people think that that's a lot of money. What I say, it's not enough.
All right, 5 minutes. I'm going to hold you to 5 minutes here. Give me 5 minutes to explain financial literacy to me. You explained wealth. What's financial literacy then to you? Is it just understanding the terms? Is it understanding the process? Or is it work in the system?
It's all three. You need to understand the terms. But again, you need to understand that process as well, as far as looking at income and expense, assets and liabilities. And so on first glance, again, people think that when they're managing their income and their expenses and they have a small surplus or savings, that they're financially literate. And then what they do is they'll take that little surplus that they have and they'll go out, like they'll say, buy a car, buy a home, saving for a down payment for the home. And then what they'll do is they'll get liabilities, but they still have their income is still coming from them trading or spending time to create earned income. So yes, now they have the expenses, meaning that I got to pay for my kids,
college clothes,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. And then because we need shelter and we need, transportation and stuff. Now I couldn't fund those things because I couldn't afford it. So I ended up having to get a loan. So now I receive credit. So I call those liabilities now. And so now not only do you have expenses and you have liabilities to cover that income that you're generating out of your own sweat and tears. What happens when you can't work?
Yeah.
What happens when you can't produce that income? Your expenses are still going to be going. They're going to still roll on. And your creditors, the liabilities, they're going to keep on going.
I just give it all back.
So when you lose, but here's the thing. When you're wealthy and you understand the process, liabilities become your friend. Expenses become your friend.
What?
Because technically, everything is free. You're not paying for it. You're not trading time for money to pay for these things. When you're financially literate. You have financial literacy when you are focused on your asset column.
And let's talk about that for 1 second. You had a friend on a long time ago who was high up in the Navy. And you and he talked about how many people in the Navy that you were both in the Navy together. Have a job, get a salary, get a pretty good salary. Particularly when you think of they have no other expenses. Somebody pays their food, somebody pays their insurance, somebody provides a roof over their place for them to live.
Right.
And this should all just be profit. And what do? Piss it away. They go buy flashy clothes and flashy cars and flash it around and drinks for the house and everybody here. And rather than setting it aside for the day they're not going to be in the Navy and coming out with a stake with a bunch of money that they've either got working for them or they can start working for them, get a job. I mean, they can get a business, they can do something, an asset. They take that money, and I think that's like most of us. That's an extreme example. When I have extra money after I pay my bills, I don't buy an asset, I buy a pleasure.
You put that money on another expense, because as your income increases, so does your wants and your desires.
Right.
So you increase your expenses, but you also increase your liabilities proportionately.
I want
And
suddenly a nicer suit. I've earned it. I want a nicer
right.
car. I
So
want a nicer meal.
So without the right narrative and without the right definition, you're going to fall into that trap. What I'm telling people is that, and again, not just the Navy, it could be any profession, it could be any job.
Right. That
It's
one
the
I only did because they clearly got.
Right.
They're not immediately like most people, young people. Oh, I gotta put food on the table. No, I'm getting the food. I gotta have a place to pay rent. No, I'm getting a free place to stay. These people have those expenses paid for them. So whatever money they're bringing in, a lot of it they could or should be.
Meaning that they could be ahead of the game.
Yes, that was the point I was trying to get at. When they
Exactly.
come out of the Navy, they're not behind. Like, gee, I never bought a house like everybody else did, so I don't have an asset. I didn't start a business.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. It's because they were never taught or never trained to focus on the asset column.
No.
Because you are financially illiterate.
Right.
If you're not focused on creating income producing assets. And I don't care how much money you make, because how much money you make, how much income you earn, it doesn't matter. It's all about how you earn your income. And Paul, 10% of the population, 10% of society understand this. It's the other 90% that do not.
I was going to say most people I know don't have. They might have some little. They have a house, so that's been an income producing because it's gone up in value. Most people I know don't have a business or a side business like you're always preaching and teaching and talking about. So they're not writing off any of those expenses, nor are they producing any income other than the effort that they put in themselves.
But again, you're still talking about expenses and liabilities. You're not talking about the asset column.
Yeah, that's a hard one for us to wrap our head around.
It is.
Most of us have very few
and we probably
assets.
can't do this in one show. This is just this is like the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
And we're just putting a toe in the water just to see how it feels. Just before we dive into this subject, this conversation. Because I'm gonna tell you, this is the deep end, Paul.
Yeah.
This is where if you don't tread water and you don't know how to swim, you're going to drown.
Sink or swim.
Sink or swim, buddy. Sink or swim.
Well, I got to think about this one a little bit. Can we continue this one and come back another time here? Because assets, I got to think of what are assets. I remember somebody once asked me when I was 30, and I had what I thought was a really good job. I had a big fancy car. I had a beautiful girlfriend, I thought, and I rented a nice place up in Hollywood. I thought I had it all. I went down the checklist: girl, car, job, cool place, lots of toys. And somebody said, "What is your net worth? What are your net assets?" And I realized I rented everything. I hate to say it, including my girlfriend. I rented everything. Yeah, that's the joke. I rented everything, even my girlfriend. I didn't own my car. I wasn't married. I wasn't building a family. I wasn't building anything.
But Paul, that's most people. That's 90% of the population. And what happens? It turns into a habit.
Yeah.
And then that habit is ingrained after 10, 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
and it becomes a belief. And once faith becomes a belief,
Mm.
it's almost game over.
Yeah.
You have to have an intervention after that to get people to change their mindsets, to change direction. But we're going to keep on talking about this. We're going to keep on giving
I
people
need an
resources.
intervention. We all need an intervention because we're
What I
stuck in this narrative. We're stuck in this cycle or whatever you called it here.
but what we're doing, Paul, is we're building a community. And we want more people to come into the fold. We want more people to get this information. And where do you go? Just go to tyronefrench.coach. Okay. If you can't remember closingthewealthgap.net or closingthewealthgap.coach, just remember my name, Tyrone French. Look at the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Go to tyronefrench.coach. I want you to click on services. First thing that you do. And again, these it's free, Paul. This costs you absolutely nothing. Click on services. You're going to see two links. One is going to be for articles. The other one's going to be calculators. There's going to be a calculator there so that you can calculate, guess what? Your cash flow,
Mm-hmm.
your income and expenses. There's going to be another calculator there so you can calculate your net worth. Because how do you know that you're growing financially if you're not plotting it, if you can't see it? And so
When
10%
my
of the
daughter was
population
little,
understands
when
that.
my grandson's little, we got a little stick next to the door, and every so often we stand him up and we say, "Here he is now," and here he is now, and we can see over time how he's grown.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Common, just simple, basic common sense stuff that just seem like it's so mundane that it wouldn't even matter. But what I'm telling people is it does matter because everything that you do today is going to compound. And eventually, just like you got this little child, this little baby,
Mm-hmm.
this 1 week old baby, one of these days that's going to be a 21-year-old young man or young woman.
Right.
And it didn't happen overnight. It was
And
a
you invest in your
process.
kids because you teach them, you train them, you God knows you take them out and work with them in their homework or work with them in playing baseball or teach them life skills or teach them how to cook or whatever it is. We invest so much time, effort, and money into, and we think of it as an investment. Our children are an
It
investment.
is.
But
I
we
agree.
don't put that, when I get extra money, I blow it. When I get something extra little if I find $20, I don't put it on the street. I say, I'm going to go spend it. And that experience is nice. I'm not saying live without, but it's gone the minute it's gone. Or it becomes an ongoing expense. It's a down payment for something that I have to keep paying for. And pretty soon I have to work harder because I have taken on more obligation. I have a very good friend of mine who makes a lot of money, has his whole life. And I told him once, I said, I guess I'm kind of envious of you. We both started together and you've made so much money. He says, I don't know why you're envious of me. The more I make, the more I spend. He said, I never get out of this trap. You think, yes, I got a bigger car than you got, but I still got the same bills you got. They're just bigger, which means I got to work even harder.
Spoken from a true, like you said, that 10 percentile.
Yeah.
People look at that and they, like you just said, they envious, but here's the thing. They don't have the same responsibilities. They
No.
don't. They don't. And
Or the same worries. If the economy's going to go up or down, they're covered. If things are that they've already
Let's see, Paul, there's
choices.
something that I specifically did not say. I didn't say worry because I don't worry about money.
Mm.
That's the difference.
But most of that's all we do is worry about money.
But you don't have to, Paul. That's my whole point. When you understand these terms, you understand these techniques. When you start focusing on your asset column, you realize that you're a creator. Money is an idea. That's all it is.
You're going to take me down a whole nother rabbit hole here and blow my mind. I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure I put that into practice. I know I don't put that into practice. I think most of us, money is, I got to get a job to get money. And the minute I get money, it goes out real quickly. And if I'm lucky enough to have any left over, I don't put it aside in savings. I certainly don't invest it and go get an asset that's going to keep earning and growing. I probably just blow it.
because it's what you've been taught.
Yeah.
And because you've been taught that and you've been acting out that, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a narrative. It's reinforced over time. You begin to believe it, and once you begin to believe something, it's like having a record player. The needle is in that groove, and it's just going to keep on
Playing the same
keep
tune.
on playing the same tune year after year.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there because there's only so much that you can cram into my head. I hear what you're saying. I got to digest it a little bit. Then maybe you can show me carefully how to lift that needle and put it into a different track here.
And I'm going to give you some homework.
Okay.
Go to TyroneFrench.coach.
All right.
Pull up those calculators, do your income statement, do your net worth statement, and have your aha moment. And we're going to talk about that on the next show.
Okay. There you
Okay,
go.
buddy.
Oh, it's going to be, I'm going to go, oh. All right. Here we go. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy.
That's our show for this week. Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, the only show that shows you how to take control of your financial future. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.